So, this is probably the wildest thing that's ever happened to me. And to make it even more insane, I can't believe I actually caught it on video. Let me set the stage. My friend Mark and his wife Sirah had just bought this new house. This was probably like 4 years ago, I think. At first, everything seemed amazing for them. A nice little house in a safe and quiet neighborhood. A few months after moving into the house, I met up with Mark for some drinks, and I asked him how the new house was treating him. He started acting a little weird. When I continued to press him, he finally caved in and told me what was bothering him. He and Sirah were convinced that the house was haunted. I can be kind of a jerk sometimes, and I started to laugh as soon as he told me. I asked him why he thought his house was haunted, and then he gave me the entire story. For starters, apparently someone did die in the house. Something the real estate agent did in fact disclose before they bought it. So, snorts. This wasn't a surprise. In fact, it's what actually made the house cheaper for them to purchase. Because of that little bit of information, Mark and Sirah had convinced themselves that the ghost of this dead person was haunting their house. Now, I'm not a believer in ghosts or anything else paranormal. It's just not my thing. I'm not a horror or true crime fan. That's probably why I always dismiss people when they start talking about spirits. I started pressing Mark a little more. I said to him that just because someone died in the house, it doesn't mean that it's haunted. He continued to give me more of the story. He told me that every night, he and Sirah wake up at some random hour. There are strange noises that seem to come from everywhere in the house. He insisted that it wasn't just the pipes or the house settling. He said it was like something bumping into furniture and moving around. They would wake up in the morning and furniture would be slightly moved. Things that were on the counter would be misplaced or moved completely. Mark said that, on one occasion, he left his favorite Miami Dolphins coffee mug on the counter, and in the morning, it was gone. They searched everywhere in the kitchen, and it was just gone. Mark claimed that he didn't think it was anything paranormal at this point. He was still just weirded out by everything, thinking all these strange events must have just been some kind of weird coincidence. That all changed a few nights before Mark decided to tell me the story. Just like several nights prior, he and Sirah woke up in the middle of the night. It sounded like a crash coming from the basement, wanting answers. He went down to investigate, even though he was terrified. The basement is loaded with boxes and storage, so he said it was impossible to be able to tell if anything had just fallen over. Apparently, while he was down in the basement, something moved in the corner of the room. Mark ran out of there so fast and hadn't gone back since. He started calling all these strange things paranormal activity, like the movie. And just like in the movie, he was terrified that if he kept antagonizing it, things would get worse. All of this seemed ridiculous to me. I was trying not to laugh because I could clearly see that Mark was upset. I was politely trying to remind him that paranormal activity is just a movie, and you can't antagonize something that's made up. That set him off. He was well aware of how he sounded, and that was part of the reason he was so upset. He knew this sounded crazy, and yet, he hadn't slept well in weeks. Now, he's terrified to sleep at his own house. He even told me that he and Sirah had slept at a hotel the last 2 nights. They didn't want to sleep in the house until they could figure out a rational solution to this absurd problem. He was practically in tears trying to explain this to me. He said it was like an extreme phobia ever since he went into the basement. He's convinced himself that something is down there, and he said he's physically unable to go downstairs. I still couldn't tell if Mark was pulling a prank on me or if he was serious about all this. Even as I write this, I'm shocked all over again that they thought their house was haunted. This just seemed so irrational to me. I was starting to feel bad for Mark. He was so upset. He could barely get the words out now because I thought this was ridiculous. I offered to check the basement for him thoroughly. I told them that they just need to calm down a little bit and come to their senses. I said I would check every corner of the basement, and make sure no ghouls are present, and that whatever noises and weirdness they're experiencing can be explained somehow, in some way. He was hesitant at first because he thought my being there might antagonize the spirit, but I shut that down quickly. I remember Sirah fighting with Mark on the phone after this because she didn't want me to check it out. She was 100% convinced that this was paranormal in nature, and I, along with both of them, would be in trouble if I went and looked in the basement. After the call, Mark said he would drive me to the house, but he was going to wait outside, and that we couldn't tell Sirah. I was a little sketched out by that, but I wanted more than anything to prove to them that nothing was down in their basement. When we got to the house, Mark begged me one more time not to antagonize the spirit, just in case. I just nodded and walked into the house. Me being me, I fully intended to antagonize the imaginary ghosts to prove that they don't exist. Before going into the basement, I walked around the house, and nothing seemed weird or out of the norm, other than a nasty odor. And before anyone starts to think that the odor was like demonic in nature, it wasn't that kind of odor. It was like body odor. Finally, I went into the basement. It was a mess. There were boxes everywhere. After looking around for a second, I started shouting for the ghosts to appear. And just like you may expect, there were no ghosts or any other paranormal events happening. I was about to leave, and then I decided to have a little fun at Mark's expense before leaving. I pulled out my phone and started recording a little video. I was recording in selfie mode just because I was only going to show this video to Mark as a joke. I made a comment in the video about how there aren't any ghosts and how there's nothing but storage down here. I turned around and lifted the camera a little bit to show the storage over my shoulder. And as I did that, I thought I saw something weird in the corner of the screen. So I moved the camera back a little bit, and sitting right there was some creepy old guy. Not a ghost or a demon, but a sickly old man. I wish I'd continued recording, but out of instinct, I just turned it off and ran. So I'd been down there for a few minutes, and I hadn't seen any ghosts or monsters. Nothing except all of your useless storage down here. Oh my God. When I got upstairs, I slammed the basement door and held it shut. I heard the old man screaming on the other side of the door. The scream was more of a painful wailing. I continued to hold the door shut with one hand and called Mark with the other. When he answered, I blurted out that he needed to call the police because there was a man in his house, not a monster or ghost. A man. While this was happening, the man made his way to the basement door and tried opening it as I was holding it shut. I started yelling at him, and he just kept screaming. Then, the screaming turned to him repeatedly saying, "No, no, no," over and over again. It probably took like 10 minutes for the police to show up, and I tried to hold the door for the entire wait. And I kid you not, this guy tried opening the door the entire time. As soon as I heard the police cars roll up, I let go of the door, and the man busted through it. I should have waited until the police were in the house. There was a moment when I was standing face to face with this old man. He was clearly insane. His eyes looked almost plastic. He screamed in my face so loudly that it knocked me over, and then he ran out the back door of the house. I tried chasing him, but the old guy was deceivingly fast. I started yelling for the cops, who were just now jogging through the house with no urgency whatsoever. I told them that the guy ran out the back door, and I didn't see which direction he went. The cops looked for a bit, but couldn't find the guy. Mark called Sirah and told her what happened. She was angry at first, but then just in shock over everything. We went into the basement to check everything out after that. The awful smell was clearly the body odor of this man. In the corner of the basement was a small pillow and a little blanket, and the smell was the worst over there. Also, next to the blanket was Mark's Miami Dolphins mug. I gave the cops the video, and I don't think they caught the guy, at least not to my knowledge. After all this, Mark told me that before this happened, Sirah never locked the doors. She grew up in a nice neighborhood, and since this was also a nice neighborhood, she didn't think anything horrible could happen, either one day while they were at work, or in the middle of the night when they were sleeping. This man just walked into their home. Now, she checks the locks about 5 times before going to bed. It just goes to show you that no matter how nice an area you live in, if you leave the door unlocked, you'll always be inviting unwanted